What's going on, fam? Welcome back to the channel. I have the much awaited and anticipated Nike Phantom GX Elite 1 month review. I have tested these boots. I have run them through the ringer. I've played on artificial ground here. There's a grass pitch next to it. I've played on all the surfaces here in the snow, in the rain, in the sunshine. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I want to tell you why I think these boots are a massive improvement in every way over the GT2. That'll be a separate video, but also what are some of the things that they could improve on with this GT2 after numerous weeks of testing. So without further ado, let's hop into the sole plate. So the sole plate of the Phantom GX Elite is actually really nice. I love the stud pattern of this sole plate. I think the stud pattern both on AG and FG gives a really nice bite into the ground and multi-directional movement. I think they did a really good job, similar to Hypervenom Phantom 3 in the way that that boot had chevron studs and sort of a hexagonal, but they were basically conical studs. This one also has a similar shape, although it's a little bit more aggressive because it shares some of those star stud shapes with the Vapor 15 and Superfly 9. And so I think having those conical studs, so majority of conical studs, and then you've got a few bladed studs here in the toe area, and then you've got some of the star-shaped studs as well. Those are absolutely fantastic for multi-directional movement, which I think really helps in all sorts of conditions. Michael and I were actually playing yesterday as of the filming of this video out here, and it was very frosty on the ground. There was a light layer of snow, and these were perfectly fine on hard turf, like frozen turf, and then they were also great on a little bit softer grass. I am really excited to see what the AG plate looks like. I have seen photos and little like in-hand versions of this boot, this colorway with the AG sole plate, and I will definitely be purchasing a pair because I really like AG sole plates. I think they're awesome. But I do think that this sole plate does lack in one specific way, and that is responsiveness. So as you can see, the boot is very flat as it is, right? So it's pretty flat. There's no little bit of extra dip like this, where maybe Asics DS Lite X Fly 4, any of the recent Adidas speed boots with the Carbitex insert, all of those kind of put you up on your toes. This one does not feel that way. It's very flat, it's very neutral, which actually feels great as far as ball feel, underfoot, and ground feel. But I think it's a little bit lackluster in the responsiveness area. And for me, that's what kind of knocks it down a few points. I think I was under the impression that they were gonna put air zoom in these boots as well. I'm sure that they will put something like that in future generations of the GX, maybe like GX2 or whatever they decide to call it. But I do think overall, the sole plate is very solid, but it does lack a little bit of that responsiveness especially once you start to break it in. You sort of, I sort of feel like there are moments where my feet are doing 95% of the work as opposed to 80% of the work in something like a leather F50 remake, where that Carbitex insert really gives me a little bit of extra push off and lets me kind of focus on other things, if you will. Minor, but definitely something that's going to dock it a few points. So for me, this sole plate is a 7.5 out of 10. It's very good. It's definitely above average, but it's not quite to the standard of the rest of the high-end sole plates, and I definitely don't think it's as responsive as the Air Zoom unit in the Vapor 15 or the Carbitex insert for the Speed Portal Plus and Point 1. And so for that reason, stud pattern's great, just a little bit lackluster in responsiveness. So for me, 7.5 out of 10. Now let's move on to heel area. And oh gosh, the amount of questions that I got about the heel area from other people talking about the GT1 and GT2, or I guess it was GT and GT2. That heel area felt really hollow and really hard. Like there was no moldability. It felt really hollow to me. Maybe it's because I have a really thin heel area, but that heel area in that GT caused I still get messages on my old GT videos about the heel area. Hey, does anybody else have this issue? Yep. Everyone has issues with this heel area, so that is an unfortunate part. This GX though, they've really fixed. There's a positive and a negative part to this heel area. The positive is that It's very soft, very nice, really moldable to your foot, which I think is absolutely fantastic. They did a great job at fixing that part of it. What that means is it's much more comfortable out of the box. It's much softer, so there's a lot more moldability depending on what shape of heel you have. I have a really wide midfoot and toe area and then have a really thin heel area. So it's kind of a weird combination of, there's only a few boots that really truly fit my foot perfectly, and they're few and far between, put it that way. This heel is awesome. I really like it. It fits really nicely. I had no slippage in any part of the break-in process, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Really no issues at all as far as the heel area goes, and I do think this will be suitable for most because it is a little bit softer and there's not as much structure to the back. That's also kind of the double-edged sword piece of it. So the piece that I don't really like about it is that it does lack a little bit of structure, and so when you're doing super hard turns, and again, I'm training, it's either myself, Michael, or other pros, we're all training together here in Rochester and then over in Seattle, where I'm from. And there are very, very few moments where I'm thinking about my boots. The boots, at the end of the day, should kind of disappear, in my opinion. Yes, they should be comfortable. They should be nice on your feet. They should be, break in well, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, when you're really getting into the playing part of it, my opinion is that the boots should sort of disappear to the point where you don't think about them. And there were a couple moments where I would pivot and nothing really happened, but it was just not as much lockdown in that heel area as I wanted to. We'll talk about general lockdown in a sec, but I do think that they've almost overcompensated from the GT2 to this boot, and so they've made it overly soft, which absolutely skyrockets comfort, but it definitely kind of digs into the performance aspect of it. I wouldn't say it's anything that's that big of a deal. Again, you see most pros at the top end in the World Cup wearing the pink version of these, and I am absolutely willing to wear these in a game. I would have no issues with that. It's just the tiny minute things that I'm trying to give to you guys so that you understand after actual testing and really playing in these boots what they're like. So for me, given the positives and the negatives, this heel area is an 8 out of 10. Very good, very solid, no complaints as far as comfort. 8 out of 10. Okay, so now the upper, and the upper of this boot is what makes this boot shine. Genuinely, it is one of the best uppers I have seen, especially from the Nike brand in a long time. I do think the Vapor upper is really good, but this boot is fantastic. In my initial review, the title was "These Will Change the Game," and I definitely think that grip knit is something to be feared from other brands and also capitalized on from Nike's perspective. Nike, if you're listening to this, keep going with the grip knit. I think it's absolutely fantastic. You've got the high tenacity yarns, which in this boot are the darker blue, and then you've got the grip knit portions of them, which are the light blue color. So I know it might be a little bit hard to see, but this kind of swirly pattern, all the dark ones are that high tenacity yarns, which you are a little bit more structured, so it holds the shape of your foot in across the upper, gives you a little bit of lockdown and stuff, which is awesome. Because it's a mostly fly knit upper, and then you've got the grip knit piece kind of wrapped around it, it does such a good job of wrapping your foot. It's a little bit, and I'll talk about this in a second, it's a little bit longer on the break-in period of time. Maybe that's because it's 2 layers here. Could be, maybe it's just the shape of my foot. But this upper broke in, and it is, look at this, so soft out of after break-in period of time. This lacing system does a great job at just kind of giving you the space to get your foot in there, and then the upper just does a fantastic job of wrapping your foot. If you are a fan of knit boots just in general, you will love these. And I say that because not only are these fantastic football boots for all foot shapes, but the upper does such a good job at molding to your foot, wrapping around your foot. And I mentioned in the initial review, I was like, oh, they're like an 1/8 of a size long. They're not kind of quarter to an 1/8 a size long. And I'm not really sure. The GT2 especially was a lot longer for me. These ones broke in beautifully, and I have had no issues with this upper at all. It has been absolutely fantastic, and I will tell you the reason why I love grip knit so much is because, as I mentioned earlier in the video, we were out here in the sort of snow. It was super wet. Michael was wearing a pair of AG Vapor 15 Elites in that black colorway, which I have actually a review on those. And those, he was slipping all over the place. You guys know his touch is incredible. And there were moments where he would step on the ball or dribble and the ball would just fly away from him in the way that it does when you've got really frozen wet turf. These didn't do that. The ball control that I was able to have with this upper was just sensational. And I actually mentioned it to him. I said, dude, are you having issues with the grip on the Vapor? And he's like, well, there isn't really like grip elements on the Vapor, which is fair enough. It's just it's a speed boot. But the difference that this grip knit made was unbelievable. I genuinely was blown away by this, and I was so excited. I'm like right in the pole, so I'm trying to get sunshine. There you go. The grip on these that you get is genuinely sensational, and I don't say sensational as in it's a ton of grip. I say that it's the perfect amount of grip. I've played in dry, like really dry, hot conditions where you'd think grip often gets too sticky. Didn't with these, because it's like a waxy finish. It's very smooth to the touch, but it does have that tiny little bit of like waxy feeling to it. It does such an incredible job at being not too grippy in dry conditions and grippy enough in wet conditions. And for me, that's why this upper crushes most of the other knit boots on the market, because I love Hypo Knit from New Balance. I think it's absolutely spectacular. It's a really nice, durable upper that's super comfortable. It breaks in well. But this does all of those things and has the element of a little bit of extra texturing that helps you in your ball control, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So for me, this grip knit upper is a 9.25 out of 10. Now, you know what? It's a 9.5 out of 10. This is one of the best upper materials I've had in a long time, and I love the feeling of this upper. 9.5 out of 10. All right, so let's talk about break-in time. So break-in time often for a lot of people is important because you think, hey, my most recent boots just broke and I need a new pair right now. I need to order something that I know is going to break in well so that I can jump into a game on the weekend. That is super fair. These, the two most recent sort of Phantom boots to exist outside of this are the Phantom GT2, which is the previous generation, and Phantom Ultra, which was the special edition limited release based on Hypervenom 3 and GT2. So those are kind of the two boots that I'm going to compare this to. For me, and I spoke to Michael about this as well, this is more break-in time, definitely, than Ultra for sure. The Ultras fit my foot perfectly straight out of the box, which is wild. Those are awesome. But it was less break-in time for me than the GT2. I found the GT2 really clunky out of the box, and it doesn't fit very well, and the shape is awkward, and blah, 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 blah. So it sits right in the middle of those, I would say, for me. And again, thin heel area, and then my foot gets really wide in the midfoot and the toe area. And these took about 4 to 6 hours, roughly 4 to 6 hours. I don't know the actual math, but about 4 to 6 hours of proper break-in time. So we're talking like put them on, lace them up, do my warm-up, unlace them, take them off, put them back on right away, lace them up, do my whole process. I've got a whole video on this, but I genuinely do that process with every boot because it helps me not crush my feet while I'm trying to break in these boots. Once they're broken in though, ooh mama, they are unbelievable. I love these boots once they're broken in. So break-in time, I would say 4 to 6 hours. If you have thinner feet, you probably can slip in these, no issues, no break-in time, nothing, because the upper is quite soft straight out of the box. It's just that these are a little bit thinner than Phantom Ultra because of the last that they're on. And so the sole plate of the Hypervenom 3 is slightly wider, but that's no issue for me anyway. I was able to break these in perfectly fine, 4 to 6 hours. I think that's absolutely reasonable. So for that, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Nothing crazy, but a little bit more than something like a Phantom Ultra, which was like the easiest thing to break in. That and Hypervenom 3 are the easiest boots for me to break in straight out of the box. 8.5 out of 10. Nice work. Okay, let's talk about lockdown. So lockdown is something that I've sort of hinted at throughout the video, and this does actually a really nice job of lockdown. The only thing really that kind of, I would say, takes it a tier down from something like a Vapor 15, which obviously is built on lockdown. A speed boot has to be as tight and locked in as possible. So for that reason, it's a little bit less than a Vapor 15 as far as lockdown goes, but I would say that these are very good. They're definitely above average. They're fantastic. I think they focus a little bit on something else rather than lockdown. They're not as totally focused on lockdown. So the upper does a great job. The high tenacity yarns really wrap your foot well. I don't feel like when I turn or make really sharp pivots that this boot makes, there's nothing really that comes into my mind as things that are issues when it comes to lockdown. So when I'm taking sharp turns, if I'm shooting at a really awkward angle, anywhere where I'm putting a lot of faith and trust in the boot to hold my foot in the ground in the place that I put it, really no issues. Again, the only thing that I mentioned in the heel area, it's just a little bit looser than what I would prefer. I prefer something more like a Hypervenom Phantom 3 heel that's kind of a really lovely shape, but it's pretty solid. Which the GT2 I guess tried to be, but it just failed miserably at. These ones are great. So they're definitely above average. They're not crazy like a Vapor. They're not crazy like a lot of the other speed boots on the market, but they're definitely comparable to most other things on the market, if not a little bit better. So for me, and that also remains to be seen. I'm gonna do a 1 month review on the laced, the high top lace cover version of these as well, so don't worry. So I'll do both of them. But for the low top version, again, we're only talking low top, these are an 8 out of 10 for lockdown. Solid, well above average, but not quite that upper echelon of lockdown. The color of these boots, I know that the original ones or the launch colorway ones are pink with black. Those are fantastic. That's like a 9 out of 10 colorway for me. I think they're sick looking. I think these are like a 10 out of 10. I don't give 10 out of 10s. This is like a 9 out of 10 for me. The other ones are an 8 out of 10. These are like a 9 out of 10. I think these are absolutely stunning. I love this color. This is like my brand color of blue, and the pink accents with the white, so clean. 9 out of 10 for me on the color. Okay, fit and sizing. So fit and sizing is something that I get asked about a lot for boots, especially because I tend to be pretty critical about how long the boots are. And in the initial review, I said about a quarter to an eighth to a quarter of a size long, depending on kind of what your foot shape is. For me, they were a little bit long out of the box, but as I broke them in, it literally became no issue. And you guys will see plenty of B-roll shots of these boots as I'm putting my foot in them and getting my toe all the way to the end. Once the boot breaks in, my foot's able to kind of push itself into the front of this boot, and so I had no issues with fit and sizing. I would recommend going true to size, regardless of how wide your feet are. I would say true to size, because once you break them in, it'll be just fine on the length. So for me, fit and sizing, 9.5 out of 10, 9 out of 10, I would say. Not the most amazing straight out of the box, but they're very good out of the box. And then once they break in, they're absolutely fantastic. The other thing that I think bumps it up several notches over just like being average at fit and sizing, which is great, is the fact that these I think are going to fit most foot types, because they're built on a slightly thinner last than something like Hypervenom Phantom 3. And actually, I think they're a little bit less wide than Phantom GT2, just from the last situation or the sole plate area. At least they look a little bit thinner to me. I think that's really advantageous, because if you put a nice amount of stretch in the upper, or malleability or pliability in the upper, somebody like me is able to get into it, and somebody like Michael or some more thin-footed players able to get in these, and they fit great straight out of the box. So for me, that's why these are so highly rated on fit and sizing, because I think they'll be great for most people. You have the option of a high cut or a low cut, which is fantastic, and they're different enough to actually make a difference, right? And then I also think the sizing is just great on these. So that's it. Okay, we talked about touch a little bit in the upper part of the video, but again, I will reiterate really quickly, the touch on these is fantastic. It's not gonna be barefoot like a Alpha from Mizuno or a Vapor or a Speed Portal or any of those boots, but it's gonna be really nice, enough padding. It's very similar to a combination of, it's like a thicker version, although I wouldn't really compare it to this, so I won't actually. It's like, it almost feels like Magista Obra 1 in a sense, so it's like a thin knit material with a little bit of stickiness or waxiness to the upper. Really fantastic. I love these boots. I love the touch on these boots. And so for me, the touch on these boots is a 9 out of 10. Really, really fantastic. No distractions on the upper. Great striking surface. You really can get whip on the ball. You can get knuckle on the ball. And you feel all of those types of shots and techniques, and it's really easy to do all those with this boot. There's no really like big distractions that I think come from a boot like a Predator with a bunch of those grip elements and stuff where you kind of have to adjust your technique or whatever to get the correct spin on the ball and all that stuff. This has none of that. 9 out of 10 for touch on the ball. All right, durability for the Phantom GX is fantastic. I have worn it in tons of different conditions, as I mentioned before: rain, snow, sunshine, turf, regular grass, mud, all that stuff. I've cleaned them off, obviously, and there are literally the only thing that's on this boot is a minor little scuff mark on the sole plate. So no separation. And keep in mind, these are, yes, they're regular production, but they're technically pre-production because I got them well before they actually released. And sometimes you get defects in those kinds of boots, which I've had before. And there's literally zero anything on these boots. Some people said that be careful of this little space right here. If you get cleated, just be careful that this might tear. Maybe, but because of how high it is and because of the way it kind of is on the upper and how tight it is, and so here's the other thing. So speaking physically about these boots, hopefully you can see this. So when my foot is in here, it's gonna push this material all the way up through the middle to where there's really gonna be no gaps, because the whole point of this lace cover is to sit flush to your foot once your foot's in there. Yes, of course I can say there's a hole there when there's no foot, right? You can see the gap that's in there. But once my foot is in there and it's flush up to the grip knit technology, there's really, I don't see any way where a boot's gonna get caught in there or a stud is gonna get caught in there. That's just not what I think is gonna happen. So for me, durability is a 9.5 out of 10. These have been absolutely fantastic, and I have seen no drop in performance based on break-in time. I've seen no drop in performance given weather conditions, no drop in performance on anything, no rips in the upper. It's these are very well constructed. So fantastic job on the durability, Nike, well done. 9.5 out of 10. Final category is performance and overall rating. These perform really well. They're not the top of the top in my opinion, but they're very, very good. And I think Nike crushed it with these. I think grip knit is gonna be a mainstay in the Nike lineup for a long time. I hope it is, because I love it. I think it does such a fantastic job in all sorts of conditions. Grip knit should have been what ACC is. I don't know if this boot has ACC. It doesn't say it does, but they'll probably claim it does. But you don't need it because you've got this grip knit and you get enough great touch on the ball in all weather conditions. It's a fantastic fitting football boot, and I really think they knocked it out of the park with these compared to the GT2. My opinion is that it's not quite up to the level of the Phantom Ultra or the Hypervenom Phantom 3, but it is very close. And for me, overall rating of this boot after long testing hours and several weeks of beating the hell out of these, this boot is a 9 out of 10 football boot for me. I really enjoyed playing in these. I go to them often. They're available. So a couple of the metrics that I use for the overall rating. One is how available they are for most people. Two is and availability also includes like price point, right? So you're gonna pay way over sticker for a Phantom Ultra because they're ultra limited as well. So availability, the likelihood of me personally picking these up out of the collection that I have and the rotation that I have, and also just overall performance, and these do a great job. 9 out of 10 football boot, Phantom GX Elite. That has been the 1 month review. Like the video if you got value from it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always, be awesome, take care. I'll see you guys in the next video.